So it looks like we're live now. Hi,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Welcome. Hi, nice to see you. I am so excited to have Nico with me today. We are going to talk about circadian rhythm. It's something that I started thinking more about when my husband kept asking me to put on the orange light glasses in
hmm
the evenings when I was doing loads of Substack work on my phone, and I hadn't really given it too much thought. And then when I came across Nico's work, my daughter, I think maybe she was about 3 or 4, and I was like, oh, this is actually so beautiful to be immersed in this world and think about it from her point of view, but also from mine as a mum as well, because I feel like I was just bypassing some of this stuff, because I needed to get stuff done or I had to pick up my phone again or whatever else. So I'm so excited to chat and learn a bit more.
hmm
If you're new to my world, I'm Claire Venus. I am an engagement consultant and mentor. I'm a Substack expert, and I love doing these lives. I think they're so fun. You guys are so welcome to ask questions if you have any, and I'll just keep an eye on the chat as Nico is talking. So if you do have any questions on this topic, or anything else that we're chatting about, then feel free to jump in. But welcome, Nico. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. And hi, Mackenzie and Krissa and Rachel and Jamie. I see some familiar names jumping in the chat, and I'm
Ah,
so great that you all were able to come here today to listen to Claire and I chat. For those of you who are new to my world and work, my name's Nico, and I am with Brighter Days, Darker Nights, and I teach about the impacts of light on health and wellness. And before I started Brighter Days, Darker Nights, I spent 10 years as an online business and marketing consultant. So I bring in quite a bit of business experience, and that helped me to be able to jump into launching my dream business after having supported other entrepreneurs for so long. And so it's really excited to be kind of putting a little bit of my business hat back on to chat with you, Claire, and chat with everyone else here, because I know a lot of you are also in probably the place that I was, having a young child and getting ready to, trying to launch a business. And how do you juggle screen time with parenting? You don't have to be a parent to have a circadian rhythm. Of course, it's just that being a parent does tend to cause its own level of disruption.
mhm.
And so does, working online. Obviously, I haven't made the decision to throw my devices in the river and go all offline. I'd love to share the strategies that I have for getting you to be able to have a healthy, happy, harmonious relationship with your screen time. So that was what I was excited to come in here and chat with Claire about. And we're also going to be doing a full-on workshop about this. So today is going to be more of a casual chat. And then coming up soon, we're going to really dive into the deeper works of the specific nitty-gritties. But if you do have specific questions, you're welcome to toss them in the chat. I can see that. And so I'm happy to answer those questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Nico. It's so generous of you. Like, I know you have a huge body of work on Substack as well. So if you're in this space, like, please go and subscribe to Nico and deep dive into some of the beautiful work and stuff there. So I think it's really good to sort of backtrack a bit and understand what has shifted and changed. So if I think about when I was first in offices, they were usually really badly lit. So they were
Mhm.
usually like, well, converted churches and stuff. I'm artsy, right? So it was always a converted church I was in, and there was a computer screen. And I remember it just being like hard work. And I was like, is this? This is really hard. Like, it's hard to sit down, even though sitting down is relaxing. It's hard to look at the screens. It's hard to concentrate. Like, at a certain point in the afternoon, I was like, how is everyone doing this? So
Mhm.
there was definitely something in me where I started tuning in just naturally to, okay, well, if I go for a walk at lunchtime, then I'm going to feel a lot better. If I don't, then it's going to be like, well, I'll go for a walk, but it's to the chocolate shop. We're going to get a little Cadbury chocolate bar in the afternoon and another coffee. So it's this piece, isn't it, of going like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
like what is going on? But also because now it's not that at all. Like, I'm going back, more than 20 years. Now it's like we're on our phones first thing in the morning, maybe, and I'm not shaming anybody. Like, this is just the natural pattern of like how things go down. Then we might be on the laptop, then we might be recording a podcast, then we might be doing something like this. Like, there is a lot of screen time. And I know, especially in winter here, we sometimes feel like the winters drag on and on and on. And then the summer feels like such a balm. So I, for one, would just love more balance in winter, because I know the outdoors is there. I know I've got a dog to walk, but it's still so easy to be like, oh, I'll just watch a few more funny reels on Instagram, even though I should be out having a little walk. So there's
Mhm.
definitely that piece of it where we've got some awareness, but it's so hard to break the cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and especially once your income becomes tied to it. So that's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately is that
Yeah.
it's one thing if you're like, "This is entertainment, and I'm just gonna scale back my entertainment," and that's like a willpower situation, but when your income is tied to it, there's a whole other not only the, like, necessity of it, but also, like, the relationship to it is really, really different, and so you don't necessarily have the ability to just, "Oh, I'm just gonna go cold turkey," or, "I'm just gonna, like, cut it off at a particular time." I mean, you can do those things, but your income may change. You may have to, like, massage your business model a little bit before you can make the
True.
changes a reality, so that
Yeah.
relationship there makes it almost like you don't even wanna look at it, but if you can feel the impacts on your biology and know that you're maybe stressed out and some of the things that you might be blaming on your business or blaming on your clients could actually be the natural cortisol response that we have to this kind of light, because it has really changed. Screens now are not the same screens as they were 20 years
Oh.
ago, and same thing with the light too, the rollout of energy efficient lighting. So
Mm.
there's, like, a mix of, like, the signals and how they give us timing cues, and then the other one are the missing signals.
Mm.
Um, the missing signals that we have, so because the artificial light is only like particular bands because they're just a little bulb that sends out an individual frequency compared with the light outside that gives a whole spectrum of frequencies. So we have a balance of like the missing frequencies and then we have the mistimed frequencies that both need a little bit of correction for most people, but it ends up not being super hard. So don't feel intimidated. I'll make it really
No, but
easy.
I'm leaning in and nodding because my husband has these. I think it's called Lumiere something. It's some sort of system where on the listen to me, some sort of system where on the iPad he can put like pink light on.
Yeah.
So pink light
Hmm.
goes on in the evenings, and we have
Yeah.
salt lamps as well. So for my daughter, we have the salt lamp on. But it'll
Hmm.
come to a time when I'm trying to get her to sleep, and I'm still wrestling with her. Like she is like a night owl, like definitely so much so, but
Hmm.
she also has screen time. So there'll come a point where I have to like agree with her that we're going to turn the salt lamp off, sorry. And so that's that natural-ish light, pink low light, but she still needs like full darkness. And we live in a dark sky area here, so we don't have light pollution. So we're really lucky that way round.
Yeah.
So like once that goes off, it really is pitch black, like it's dark. But we're also used to it. And then obviously the harsh reality in the morning time is we're getting ready for school and work and it is dark. So our
Mhm.
bodies are like, we're pulling them through, aren't we? And then as soon as we get on the screens, we sort of feel awake and better somehow.
Yeah, it is 'cause it does that it pushes cortisol is you hear of cortisol as our stress hormone. It's our,
Mhm.
it rises because of stress, but really it's a wake-up hormone.
Mhm.
So it's tied to that light, and when you get that light, then your body goes, "Oh, it's time for the cortisol to flow," and that makes you feel awake and alert, and especially in the morning, that feels good because it's the natural time.
Yeah.
It's the natural time for it, and so, Krissa just shared in the chat, she had the question that was like, "How can I adjust for my most productive time of day?" Right now, it's right when I wake up at my computer with some caffeine, and so he's like, "I know that going outside and having some electrolytes first would be a better, choice maybe for circadian rhythms, but how do we how do we get started on the day?" And so one of the things and especially in the wintertime, because it is like a lot of times we are working up. My whole journey into understanding circadian disruption and its impact started because I was at university, long time ago. So my oldest was 2 years old. I was still at university and I had a full-time job online and I was taking online classes because that was the era and it was so much easier than commuting and getting babysitters and all of this stuff. So I was like, I'd had my daughter with me, but it meant that I was working really long hours because anyone who's tried to work with little children knows that you're working and then you're playing and then you're making a snack and then you're like answering an email and you're just constantly in the back and forth. And I
Leaving
had
it in. Yeah. Mhm.
very few boundaries that time, and the job that I had was actually East Coast from Pacific, so I'm very aware of the racing the child out of bed to get that productive time. So East Coast from Pacific, I was logging in 4 a.m. my time
Oh,
on the
okay.
screen, 5 days a week. And so it was great because I had a huge chunk of work before my daughter would wake up and I would have to fix her breakfast and everything. But it wasn't
Mhm.
great because my circadian rhythm tanked, especially going through the winter, where then like that day would extend into the night. So there was not enough
Mm.
time for sleeping. There was not enough time for getting outside. And I didn't know about the screen filter. So the first change was my husband was the one who was after me. He's like, hey, and he just did it. He just installed Flux on my computer and set it to
Okay.
automatically, um, shift the light, and so people don't think about it necessarily, but you with your do if you're out before the sun, you want that red shift, that pink light to be on your screen in the morning until the
Okay.
sun comes up, not only in the evening, because at both times of day, like, we should be having a gentle ramp up,
Yeah.
and when instead you just get that immediate bright blue signal, it sends cortisol really high, which is really interesting for what you see happening today, and which
Mm.
is that anxiety's cortisol profile is a really, really high spike in the morning. And what happens is if it goes too high in the morning, then you have the long tail. It should be giving a crescendo
Okay.
downward across the day. But if
Mm.
it goes too high in the morning, then it's flattened. So it flattened cortisol slope. So it's not actually that morning cortisol that is necessarily the problem, but what happens to cortisol across the rest of the day that
Mm.
haps that that's when you end up feeling really tired, cranky, horrible health issues. Autoimmune is like one of the most correlated to that flattened cortisol slopes in the long term. So there are
Mm.
tons of connections with health and wellness. There that happen from, doing that. So what can you do instead is use the red shift if you have to wake up in the morning, um, and get right to work, and then eventually kind of work on, like I said, you can massage the business, especially when you're an entrepreneur, and that's where what I ended up doing was I had to quit the job. I was like, I can't be on these other people. I can't be on the corporate schedule. It's not working for my
Mm.
biology.
Mhm.
Not working for my goals as a
Did
mother.
you write
Not
that in your
working for my
resignation?
goals.
This isn't working for my biology. Oh, that's so good. So good.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
We need
So,
more of that. Like, we need more of that honesty. Like, I've
yeah,
researched this. This isn't working for my biology. Corporate
yeah.
BS does not work for my biology. It doesn't work for
Mhm.
any of our biologies. There's so many people that I work with that have burnt out from corporate and then
Mhm.
circled round to reclaiming a business
Yes.
and reclaiming something that feels really good whilst
Mhm.
maybe keeping a toe in, but then also keeping an eye on, because obviously the internet makes everything possible. Like, this has
Mhm.
been the most beautiful transition for me from live festivals and events where I would like put my body through the absolute ringer to deliver for clients
Mhm.
in that
Yeah.
space to, okay, like, it's Monday morning. What do I feel like doing? Okay, I'll see the sparklers. That'll be lovely. We'll have a little chat. We'll do some nice things. So it does make all the difference. And I know it sounds like a nice to have, but like you said, it doesn't work for our biology long term. And
Mhm.
because we're being asked to work until we're older and older and older now, my husband's father retired at like 50. So
Oh,
like
wow.
for me, that is 6 years time. And I'm like, "Wha- what? I mean, obviously, you can have the thoughts, but on a practical level, like that's not what we're doing in this country now. But not
Mhm.
unless we've planned it from being like 18 and we've got generational wealth or we've won the lottery or something. Like, we're working until we're 70, like 75. Like, that's what's
Mhm.
going on. So we need a work environment that works, don't we?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, really we do, and, all across the lifespan, we have different needs, and our circadian rhythm does really, really change, and so you see,
Mm.
young people, they don't wanna go to bed at night, they wanna stay up and have fun, and that's a natural, I just taught a sleep workshop where I was looking into this, and we really have lost a lot of the social structure that the circadian rhythm seems to have built into it, um, where sleep and activity patterns get optimized across the group, not for the individual. So all of the
Okay.
sleep research now is all like, how does this person get the best sleep possible? But I was looking at some anthropological studies and historical studies, and there was this one group who was still doing this really tribal living, and they measured them for 20 days. Across that 20 days, there was a total of 18 minutes where everyone was asleep at the same time. S-
Mm.
So the
Okay.
vast majority of the time, there was at least someone awake. And
Okay.
so no matter if we're living in like techno high rise or total living on the dirt, then
Mm.
there's humans operating a 24-hour society because someone needs to be awake to give that care. Mothers know that, but also like the hospitals, also like the social opportunities for young people when there's not work to be done, but they're up and alert and meeting each other, like going out to the clubs, going and dancing, like all of these things
Yeah.
that used to happen. So that's not like the 24-hour society is wrong. We've always had it. And so then like in older age, people tend to start waking up earlier and earlier. And that is like, then they're taking the morning watch. So if you think about like the young people were up, keeping the bears away in the night and keeping the fire stoked, they finally get tired and go to sleep right around the, time that then the elders are waking up and they're stoking up the fire and starting the water for tea and like, getting a
Mhm.
little bit of breakfast. And, um, so everyone's working together, but now we live like this super isolated, and most circadian rhythm stuff will tell you like that humans are diurnal and that if you are awake in the night, you're being very bad. And that's
Yeah.
it's not that we're not meant to be awake all hours of the day or night. We are. It's just that the lights are making it so that that's causing circadian disruption because our body biology is getting a daytime signal at night when it needs to be doing nighttime processes. So if you are waking up before the night, if you keep your environment looking like night, you don't start blasting a bunch of loud music and, being all wild and crazy, but instead you do the gentle startup,
Mhm.
then your circadian rhythm can still be happy even if you aren't doing like a totally daytime schedule. And especially in the wintertime, that's important.
Yeah, the seasonal side of it all. There's been a big move towards these like sun lamps. So we have one, it's called Lumiere. I think that is also the name of the candelabra from Disney's Beauty and the Beast, but
Oh.
that's what I've called it. But it's just
Yeah.
I haven't had it on actually, and I think this is case in point of working on my own terms, like working for myself, even through the tough sleepless nights of motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um I haven't used it, whereas I used to use it. I used to put it on first thing where I just felt like I'd been like hit by a truck and I was like, I've got to get everybody ready, like I've got to sort everything for work. And I think the transition of also having to drive to work, like because you've got to be alert to drive, right? So you feel like you
Yeah.
need something to feel like I'm awake, I've done the things, I feel like I've, tidied the kitchen before I left or whatever it was. So I used to blast this light. And people said that it really helped with seasonal affective disorder and all of that sort of stuff. And it's all of the different things that we see. And it's sort of like what's trending, isn't it? But I still see people talk about it, especially neurodivergent people. Like, has anyone had one of these? Does it work? Does it
Mm-hmm.
help with anxiety? Does it help with depression? I'd love to know your thoughts on those.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have them in the US? Do you have those things?
Oh yeah, the
Mm.
sad lights. And what people don't
Satellites, that's what it's called. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, what people don't realize about that because they treat SAD as a condition of light deficiency.
Yeah.
When I look at any kind of depressive situation, I look at it as darkness deficiency.
Okay.
So there's a very different, but if you look at so all of the research for humans, which there are, tens of thousands of studies, but it's all correlative because we're not going to design a study where we induce depression in anyone. So we can't say this causes depression. But in
Mm-hmm.
animal studies, you can easily cause depression because they do
Right.
very mean things to animals
Mm-hmm.
by disrupting their light environment and giving them light all nights of the day. So what really is happening is that in the wintertime, we extend sunset. So the sun goes down and then we have all of our lights and overhead lights on. So our body still thinks that it's daytime. And then we don't turn off the lights until right before we go to bed. So then it takes about 2 hours. So I've talked a little bit about cortisol. Cortisol is your wake up hormone. You've heard of melatonin as a sleep hormone. You don't realize that melatonin is also a reproductive hormone that is also a major antioxidant involved in cellular repair. It's what keeps our mitochondria healthy. Our mitochondria are what are inside of our cells day and night, churning out energy. For us to be able to go about our days. So the mitochondria need to sleep. They need to sleep in darkness. This is also part of the whole anemia question and why people will be anemic for years at a time. And no matter how much supplementation they do, it doesn't move the needle on their anemia because their nighttime sleep isn't done in a proper darkness. So that full dark for at least 10 hours. But if it's the middle of winter, you might even have more than
Yeah.
10 hours of darkness. So it's not that you have to be asleep that whole time, but it's that you need that time. Your body needs to be in darkness. Otherwise, the melatonin won't flow. And instead of
Wow.
running melatonin, you're running cortisol, which is your wake up hormone. And cortisol is stimulating, but it doesn't help you rest and regenerate. So when you wake up
Mhm.
and you feel like you've been hit by a truck and your eyes are gritty, it's hard to regulate your body temperature, your heart's thumping. I think all of us are familiar with these experiences, what it feels like. Anyone who's done international travel knows jet lag. But all of that is acute circadian disruption, and it shouldn't feel like that every single day. It
Right.
really shouldn't. You should be, like,
Yeah.
able to wake up smoothly without an alarm clock whenever you need to,
Yeah.
and that happens when you actually honor the need for darkness and rest and to slow down a bit in the wintertime. The slower pace of winter is real, and it doesn't mean you have to be sleeping that whole time. You could be knitting by candlelight or, a lot of creative works have been done at that time, reflecting on your dreams and all of that. It's just a different pace of life compared with the hard work of winter when your body is ramped up for vitamin D and sunlight and powering through and, like, getting everything ready, right? So there's a lot more physical work that happens in the summer and a lot more of the mental, emotional work that happens in the winter. So having that
Yeah.
oscillation is another place that is a really beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur, that if you can, get all of your pieces in order to give yourself that flex and flow, which Substack has been a lovely place for that. I love the ability to schedule out my posts and content, and so that there's a steady stream, even if my work behind the scenes isn't as steady as it looks on the publishing front.
Yeah, it's such a good point with the scheduling and also like this feeling of the move away from social media's consistency. You'll hear it's taught across every single social media modality that I've ever listened to, where it's like you've got to be consistent. And it's like, as a seasonal human, like I couldn't be less consistent. I'm so inconsistent, but it might not look that way because scheduling.
Yeah.
And also riding the train of it all, right? Like
Mhm.
I think being visible and being top of mind, like people just have different energy for that, don't they? And sometimes
Mhm.
it feels good and fine, and sometimes it feels overexposing and like not the time. And then people will have a burst, come springtime, maybe they feel like really creatively turned on to a project and they're like, right, like I'm going to do all the things. And then by autumn, they're like, why have I done all of this? So it's really interesting with the creative cycle as well, I think, to think about this stuff.
Mhm.
I loved what you said about melatonin as well. And I'm really curious about this because we actually bought some melatonin when we were on holiday last year because you can't get it here. So you can't buy it as a supplement here.
Mhm.
And I was talking to my friend about this because she was really surprised. And I was like, yeah, like, I don't know why, but it's just, you've got to be prescribed it from the doctor. And I mean, we're not really big on going to the doctor and trying to have any sort of holistic conversation. It's hard. But my husband has had chronic fatigue since he contracted COVID when I was pregnant with my daughter. And so we're
Mhm.
always curious about all of these different ways. And he's got, red light therapy that he does. Like we bought one, so it's at home. And then this was another thing that he'd looked into, and it'll be cross at me. But when you're like listening about the mitochondria, and I was like, yes, I know this. We've spoken about this. There's so many, and I just
Yeah.
can't hold it all. But I
Mhm.
do think it really is interesting with the melatonin supplements when we're talking about supplements, and I know somebody mentioned electrolytes earlier on, which I absolutely love. Like, is there a time of day for this? Like, or are we just bypassing the work that we should be doing naturally? What are your thoughts?
Melatonin is one of my favorite things to talk about. We could go
Oh, good.
on and on and on, okay? Melatonin is just absolutely amazing, and it's so much more than we were ever taught, and it's so much more than, just something that you should buy at the grocery store, in a bottle, because it is true that melatonin comes in a lot of different ways, okay? So we have all these sources of melatonin. We have circadian melatonin. That is timed, okay? So your circadian melatonin is going to come up in the evening. When cortisol goes down, melatonin comes up. That's
Mm.
coming out of your brain, coming out of your pineal gland. It needs darkness. So that's why, and it takes 2 to 3 hours of darkness. So, my friend, Sarah Kleiner, I just did a live with her recently. So if you guys are interested in that, you could go back and find it on my page. It was a really great chat, and she created the app. It's called My Circadian.
Okay.
And it has a light tracker and a lux meter. So in the evening, Yeah, and you can use your phone for this. Take the lux meter and take and check around your house. You want it in the 2 hours before bedtime down at least below 10 lux. Okay?
Mm.
And then when you're ready for your sleeping environment, you make sure that it's down below 1 lux in there. That will make, if you're very sensitive, you might need it below 5 lux, and you'll kind of just figure out over time, in the time before sleep. So that 2 hours before sleep, that is the time that most people are getting Netflix, or, they're watching a show. A lot of people, they put their children to bed. They can't wait to get their kids to bed so that they can have grown-up time.
Mm.
But if you're not having it, if your environment isn't light, then the melatonin's not gonna flow.
Okay.
So that's the pineal melatonin. And then in the morning, when you get that light, that pineal melatonin will go away and cortisol will come up.
Mm.
So that's pineal melatonin. Comes
Mm.
out of your brain. Precursor is tryptophan. So very important to be eating a high protein diet if you're having melatonin issues and to have super strong gut health. So that's a whole other conversation, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to look at some other sources of melatonin, okay? So the next source, which may even be a bigger source of melatonin, is coming from that red light therapy lamp you mentioned. Infrared light on your skin. Every single, your blood doesn't have mitochondria, but all of your other cells have mitochondria. They absorb that red light and then they start producing all of your hormones, including melatonin. So that's why I was saying that melatonin is a sex hormone. So there's a huge infertility crisis going on. Fertility rates are dropping. Part of that is from people delaying childbirth,
Yeah.
delaying having children until they're older. But part of it is also that we have this massive amount of circadian disruption. So the hormones don't know when to fire. They
Right.
need the light signals. So the natural way to get red light therapy is there's always infrared light in sunlight. So even if it's super gray and cloudy, like where I am right now, it's super gray and cloudy. It's really cold. It's actually not icy today, but right, the sunlight is fresh sunlight shining on my face. You can even just crack your window,
Yeah.
because light is nonlinear, so it can wave and move and reach you. So then you get that melatonin from your cells. Okay, there's two. The next I mentioned gut health. The microbiome can create melatonin for you if you have healthy guts. So working
Mm.
on your probiotics and not taking antibiotics, especially not being exposed to antibiotics by accident, which is a really big problem for people who live near like commercial dairies.
Yeah.
Um, there's another one. And so then the next one that we would get to would finally be what you're talking about, supplemental melatonin, dietary melatonin. Lots of foods have melatonin. So like dark tart cherries, black rice, like a lot of these foods that have this really, really rich red color actually have
Mhm.
melatonin in them. The dietary pathway, and I'm always talking about this with vitamin D too, the dietary pathway is separate from the skin pathway. So people try to drive what's happening in our biology through our skin, through our
Mhm.
eyes, by eating it, which normally, like, you'd be getting a small amount of melatonin, a small amount of vitamin D for your diet, but the vast majority would be coming from your lifestyle. For the women who are pregnant, the placenta also creates melatonin. So women in pregnancy have the highest melatonin of anyone. So that's where it gets really cool. In my world, working with moms and babies is
Why
understanding
we have to nap
melatonin
so
there.
much? So much napping. Sometimes I
Yeah.
think back to it, and I mean, I loved being asleep so much. But I remember, like, my son, it was the pandemic, so he was trying to like wake me up, and I was on the sofa, and I was like, "I've just 10 more minutes, please. Like, just let me sleep." I've never wanted sleep so much as I did in
Uh-huh.
those trimesters.
Exactly. And that's Yep, there's
Mhm.
the placenta cranking out the melatonin, yeah. And then
Yeah.
breast milk is another huge source of melatonin for babies because babies don't
Mhm.
really make it on their own. So mom
Yeah.
having a strong circadian rhythm, but that's really, for those of us, we're like trying to like be productive. Like, how do we be
Yeah.
productive? Like, let
Yeah.
your body's melatonin flow. So get that really strong red shift. At the very least, do your built-in night shift. Like, that didn't exist when I first started working online. The night shift on the screens didn't work, but now you can use the built-in night shift. But I do usually recommend actually going stronger into the color filters if you're going to be using your device after sunset or before sunrise, um, to try to filter out as very much of that blue light. They always say blue light, and that's another thing that people don't understand. when they're first hearing about this is like blue, it's not blue, it's white, right? But that white light, the reason like it has blue and green frequencies in it, to us it looks white, but if you look at the spectrometer, it has these really strong blue peaks in it that are like, what we see out in the daytime, and it's because they're designed for visibility, and that's when our eyes
Right.
are sharpest that we can see. So the non-visual effects of light have only been discovered in the past like 50, 60, 70 years. So this is
Mm.
all fairly new. Um, and so I hope there's some HR people listening, um, to figure out the scheduling and figure out the lighting and figure out the investment, because there's tons of productivity research. And a lot of times companies don't like it because you have to turn up the heat in the day. You have to turn up the light brightness, and it's actually more expensive to do circadian lighting. It's not
Right.
compensated by by dimming the lights in the evening. Your energy bill does go up when you have like a full
Yeah.
on circadian indoor, and people don't like that. And it's not very with the times in that sense, but like nature's always free. So what I have this outdoor office where I can come out here and work in the gazebo, and like it's protected. So as long as there's not sideways rain, you'll find me out here because
Yeah.
I'm outside, I'm getting the natural daylight, and it helps me to feel good and be sustainable, because I used to have that burnout cycle.
Mm.
That burning out year after year because of taking on too much in the spring and then wanting to burn it all down in the fall with
Yeah, and being
like,
like, "Why did I do this?" Yeah. I think
yeah.
and there's these little things that we can think about because obviously this is fascinating stuff. Like, people could spend years with you and your research and still be learning, like, there's so much, and I love how knowledgeable you are. So these little ways, like, I'm just thinking, so there's a skylight right here that I
Mhm,
don't tend to open because in the back of my mind, what if it rains? But actually, that's such a simple thing to do. When I'm sat here, I can just have this
mhm.
skylight open and the
Yep.
light's going to be coming in, and that's beautiful. I was
Mhm.
saying on an Instagram story the other day, like I just try and drink more water so that actually I have to get up and move. And
Mhm.
if I'm already moving, I'm like, okay, like let's get the dog's lead and just go around. Like there's these
Yep.
lifestyle things where it just makes you know that it makes you feel better, yet
Mhm.
somehow there's just this piece of the screens are highly addictive. There's always more loops to close. There's always more things to do. There's always more that we want to organize or think about or people we want to get back to. And my thing sometimes is when I've been like social at work, that's work. And then I want to be social in the evening, but I don't really have that many friends nearby. So it's like straight back into the phone again, like do some voice notes, all that
Mhm.
stuff. So it's just bringing more conscious attention, isn't it, to all of this piece of the picture and knowing that on a deep level, on an intuitive level, you already know. Like your body knows, right? Like the things that
Mhm.
we talked about today. Yes, I've got some knowledge overlaying it, but not much. Like I do know, like, oh, okay, this is what's happened. And then
Mhm.
also, going through the nighttime wake ups and all that sort of thing, I learnt so much about myself. Like, if I wasn't sleeping between about 11 p.m. and 1 p.m., I was just a horrible person.
Yeah.
Like, we just learned that about me. It's like if I can't, literally cannot. So
Mhm.
if there was anything, say if the baby's sleep had got disturbed or something like that had happened, if we'd been on a car trip and they'd had a long nap or whatever, and they wanted to be up later, I'd be like, I'm gonna have a nap, like like a nighttime nap, and
Yep.
then
Mhm.
hopefully I can do this. And my husband's different, he's a real night owl, and in the mornings are slower for him. And I think
Mhm.
honoring who we are outside of what society expects is just
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing if we can.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that you shared that because it ties exactly what I was saying into our sleep is actually social and we don't think of it. We think
Yeah.
of sleep as being individual, but we are meant to take the night watch for each other and to find the time of day that's natural for us. That's absolutely the best when it can work out for couples that way to help their baby be cared for through the night, their child, and still for each to get rest that they need and to give those allowances to each other, even if it doesn't look the way that we think that it should, where like everyone's sleeping exactly the same time. I know so
Mm,
many couples are so frustrated with their children because they just want the children to go to bed at the same time every night. They want to have their time and then they want their sleep to be exactly the same. And it just
mm,
never is because especially the further away from the equator you live, the more that seasonal variation is. So no matter what your lifestyle is, the day length is still going to be the strongest driver of your circadian rhythm. Even if you never go outside, it still is because we still get the light through the windows
Yeah,
and things. Yeah. So I love what you said about opening the skylight because if it starts to rain, you can always just go and close it.
exactly. That's the thing. Of course I can. Sounds so obvious.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so there's a little question here from
Mhm,
Rachel. I recently bought the Chroma Sky Portal. It just clips onto the desk. I feel like that would be a great solution for office workers. Do you
mhm.
know that tech?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just a nice bright, much more fuller spectrum. So I'm always like, any kind of artificial light is going to have these like bands just because of the way that they're manufactured. It doesn't give a continuous spectrum. So it never fully replaces daylight, but there are much better and worse options when it comes to bulbs. So that's one that just has way more of the light. And it is so important because, like I said, there's the timing element. So you wouldn't want to use that at night and you wouldn't want to use it first thing in the morning to wake yourself up,
Mm,
unless it has that nice red tone. Um, but it is helpful because in the daytime, we are getting that's why I say brighter days, darker nights as my publication name, because we need it to be brighter in the day. Um, and so that's where that Lux meter is also really helpful. If you get that app from Sarah Kleiner, My
mm,
Circadian, you use your Lux meter in the daytime and you'll see like it'll be if super low. Our body can handle like thousands and thousands of lux. So go outside, use your lux meter, come inside, use your lux meter. And that difference to your eyes, the visual spectrum, you're like, I can see my paper great. This is plenty bright enough. But if you go outside, okay, Rachel says that that light does go orange red. Yeah, and you can dim it.
mm,
Perfect. Yeah, I've looked into that one, and it looks like a really good option in terms of having um, when you are stuck in the day. And it's amazing how many of our healthcare workers actually are in some of the unhealthiest conditions for circadian
mm,
rhythm, working super crazy night shifts, really, really long hours under the craziest lights. Then, yeah, our office workers. In the, so I am also the research director at the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology, where we teach this to lighting designers, healthcare practitioners, all kinds of people. It's a continuing education program. Um, and we had a presentation there recently, last year actually, from his name's Peter Vito, and he actually there are light collectors that they put on the roofs of buildings that can turn and collect all of the sun and pipe that sunlight straight into the building through fiber optic cables. Really, really amazing technology. And he is figuring
mm,
out how to adapt that to actually have real sunlight backlighting screens.
mm.
So there's a
Oh,
whole
okay.
future era where we won't
Yeah,
have to be thinking about these things so much if we invest in the right technology,
yeah.
that we could actually have real daylight
Mm,
inside of buildings. And how amazing would that be for our productivity, for our mood? Yeah, the long-term sustainability. There's a lot of really exciting tech and a lot of innovators working on this issue because it is potentially driving a lot of chronic disease. Like artificial light at night is in the US is like it took 14 years, but they finally classified it as a carcinogen. So it
wow.
is highly associated with breast cancer, mildly with prostate cancer and some other cancers, which are huge problems. And so like, oh, if we just need to dim the lights at night and potentially like stem the tide of cancer, that is really powerful. And so it starts with like your day-to-day productivity and feeling better, but if long term that means you are working into your 70s and not having to get all these surgeries and treatments and whatnot, then there's like a much bigger picture conversation that could be had around that. But it really starts with just, your day-to-day and how you feel
Yeah,
and
for
how it all
sure.
adds up.
Been really beautiful to explore some of that stuff, and I think we know some of this deep down, don't we? Like we know the sickness levels, and we know especially you know, some of the stuff that's happened in the UK more recently, like there's a lot less regulation because we used to be regulated by Europe, and then obviously we left the EU, which was a terrible decision. But anyway, we'll get political about it. But it's like when we were part of Europe, there was a lot of sense around things. And then now, like things come in that are really unregulated, like into the food stream, and there's just all different things that we've got to contend with. But I know in the US, there's been lots of that stuff already where people have really picked up on like, oh, it's this specific ingredient that is in everything processed that's making me really sick. Plus, the light plus, the way that we work or whatever it is, I don't know. And I just think there's so much in it that is a permission slip around us really consciously thinking about sustainability for our creative output. Like that's where I get really excited about speaking to Nico, because lots of us are writing on Substack, lots of us are writing and working on books and like working in maybe like a hyper focused environment because we want to, and that suits our creative flow, and maybe there's neurodivergence there and that's why. But then at the same time there's this more subtle calling of the body that if we don't listen to over time, like it just makes things harder. So it's like
Mhm.
we may as well tune in and listen to that. And the workshop next week is about circadian rhythm and productivity, but not like toxic productivity, just you understanding and me understanding. Like I want to understand this stuff as well, around where are the little tweaks, but also what does that look like if we are compelled to show up and plug ourselves into a subscription model, because it's a big
Mhm.
thing to do. We are
Yeah.
saying that we're here like long term and we're doing this work, so
Mhm.
yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I am too because there's so much, no matter what you do, whether you work, whether you don't, whether it's just for fun or whether you're being serious about it and it's tied to income,
Mm.
it's your life. It's your life that you don't get back. So,
Mm.
we do make
Yeah.
these decisions and then they have long-term consequences. So, I'm excited because when circadian rhythms are restabilized, like I see people that have, because I work with a lot of people, I have thousands of members in my Substack. And then over at the Institute, I'm working with tons of practitioners. And then indirectly, all of the clients of those practitioners are, then like all of their what's happening. And the testimonials are just amazing. But one of the ones that excites me the most is when people are like, I, I corrected my light environment. I started sleeping better. I started getting out and seeing the sunrise. Part of why I knew this was going to be a great talk with you, Claire, is because I've seen you do so many of your motivational pep talks, especially when we were in the container together over in the Telegram group, which I loved. And you'd be out there like on your morning walk and having your little bit of inspiration doing a voice note. And that is a way that you're figuring out like this works well for my biology. It feels so good. But what happens is that people are outside in the sunlight and they have a total body reset, a total download of inspiration where they suddenly know what's staying and what's going. Like, when I was like, "I'm quitting my job and I'm always gonna I'm gonna control my schedule now, and I'm not gonna work for anyone who wants to control my schedule." Not that I won't work for someone, I'm happy to I'm very collaborative,
Yeah.
but it has to be at a time that works well for me because otherwise I will burn out, and that's not fair because I've made a commitment to be there for you, and if I make that commitment, I wanna be there. So for people doing the subscription, we make the commitment to our readers, or viewers for people who are doing multimedia ones. We're gonna be there and we're gonna show up, which means we have an obligation not to burn out. We have an obligation to continue having fresh creative ideas, and how do we do that? Another big one that people come to me and they're like, "How do I reconcile this?" Because there's basically 2 camps of creatives I find, which is like there's those who are waking up before the crack of dawn, they're pounding their coffee, and they are machines, right, in that first morning, right, the morning time, and then there are the others who are like, everyone goes to sleep and the house is quiet, and that's when they finally have the mental
Yeah.
space, and then they have the huge
They
creativity.
could describe me and my husband like we are
Exactly. Yep.
those, yeah, those
Exactly,
opposites.
yep, I'm the
But
morning one, my husband's the evening, yeah.
and I think that it's been so beautiful over the 12 years we've been together, because Dave is so interested in it all, so he'll try different things. So in the spring, summer, he was setting an alarm, a gentle alarm for sunrise. So he has
Mhm,
an app, it tells you so at the exact point of sunrise.
mhm,
And he would just come in here and the sun rises through this big window in here. It's really beautiful. And he would stand and like absorb that sunrise and then do a
yeah,
meditation and then go back to bed after the meditation. So he
mhm,
was in that cycle for a while. And a couple of times where I was like, oh yeah, I'll get up, like I'll pop to the toilet, I'll come in, have a look. And it's stunning, when you're like, why wouldn't you do this every day?
yeah,
Because it's so beautiful. Like, my
mhm,
goodness, it's incredible.
yeah,
Um it would be such a beautiful thing, but he found that that was really impactful on his health for
Mhm.
that time of year. Well, it was last year or the year before, but that's out of his usual rhythm because usually he'd be sleeping in that time. But he loves the deeper sleep, like between probably about 8 a.m. and probably about 10 a.m. Like he has a
Mhm.
really, really deep sleep then. So if
Mhm.
he can be left to have that sleep and the kids don't jump on him, like
Uh-huh.
that's lovely for him. He feels like, okay, like I'm ready for the day now.
Mhm.
Whereas I'm definitely like, and some of the times with Substack, like I was waking up so excited to write at like 4:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And then the sun
Mhm.
would be coming up as well. This was like summertime, so the sun would be coming up soon after. And I was like, this is amazing. So
Yep.
it's going with the flow of it all, isn't it? But then tuning
Mhm.
in and understanding what like your body wants to say to you about it all. And
Mhm.
I'm excited to talk next week as well about like the bits and bobs of equipment because we all need
Yes.
a bit of an upgrade when it comes to
Mhm.
equipment. But there are things that we can switch on that we can do as well, isn't there? As well as buying bits and bobs to sort of plug
Yeah,
in.
exactly. Yeah, I'm always talking with people like, "Okay, well, like, we'll start with what you have and we'll deal with all of that, and then once we have what you have, then we'll see what else, we need." Because there's another one, like, it's kind of not no one really wants to look at, like, the Wi-Fi and signals and everything, but I have, like, there's a meter you can get to actually read the Wi-Fi, because that will open like, they're like, "Oh, it doesn't have any effects." I'm like, "What do you mean it doesn't have any effects?" It opens up the calcium channels inside of your cells, so then your calcium that's supposed to be inside of these voltage-gated channels get opened, and so they're positively charged, so that gives you, like, this positive charge across your body. And that's where, like, after calls and things, like, you're like, "Oh, this sounds so woo," but it actually has an instant effect if you after your call, after your time on your device, you go and actually put your hand on a tree outside, and then it will instantly ground your body out, and if you were reading yourself with a voltage meter, they've done this with babies in the NICU too, that the babies in the NICU, they have this static charge on them, this positive charge inside of,
Mm,
the incubators. If you move it 18 inches, so people are like, "Oh, you crazy nut, you're afraid of your Wi-Fi." I'm like, "I'm talking about 18 inches, like, give yourself 18 inches of space, and you can physically read that on your body, and one of the first things that happens is your vagal tone resets. So from a
wow.
nervous system perspective, like you do all this time on the call, and then you go out and put your hand on a tree for a couple of minutes or go stand barefoot on the grass. And it actually has a real biological effect that's very grounding, very setting, very important for your vagus nerve, your whole vagal tone in your body to reset, especially as you start to grow and you're holding more energy there because then you do have that stress response that might be driving cortisol even if your light is right just because you're doing more we're not really we're not used to especially when you're in that growth stage, which I know you've been through, where suddenly you have this visibility level that is just really a different than you had before. There was a question in the chat: should we wear sunscreen, or there are no UV rays in the morning so it doesn't matter? And absolutely, have no fear of getting sunburned if the sun is low in the sky. You only can get sunburn with UVB light, which is when your shadow is shorter than you are. So if your shadow is longer than you are, it's really easy to tell. Just stand there and look, are objects shorter or longer than the objects that cast the shadows, right? So if your shadow is long, you have no risk of getting sunburn. If the shadow is short, then you can be careful. I still don't recommend sunscreen. Our body doesn't really detox that, especially for children. They really don't recommend it for babies. You can get certain like zinc things, but it's better to just cover up and use shade and to time that sunlight. You can use that My Circadian app, or you could use the DMinder app. You put in your skin tone, and then it will set a little timer and alarm for you. So we're coming up on spring for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, and you can use that timer so that you can get your vitamin D without getting a sunburn. Because it's really beautiful, no matter how much melanin or how little melanin is in your skin. You can, and this is evidence, this is totally evidence-based. I could send you the research on this if you don't believe me. It's true that no matter what, you can get your full vitamin D dose without getting a sunburn. So those
Yeah.
apps can help you do that. and
Yeah,
that is another way.
I love
Yeah.
it's app-based as well. It's like you're allowed to use an app to, like, check all of this beautiful stuff, like, build the knowledge, read Nico's stuff, like, download the research papers and do this work because if we do wanna create long term online, which lots of us do, lots of us are very passionate about it, but we're also a bit nervous and anxious, like Nico said, I've podcasted it about it at length about when things blew up for me online and how that all felt, how it felt in my nervous system. I was in therapy for 18 months because I needed somebody to be able to hold everything that was going on. So it was a beautiful gift in many ways. Therapy always is, but it was also terrifying because you literally felt like you had no control over how many people were going to want to like speak to you, it was emails or direct messages or, invites to things. And it's just a lot. Like it was just a lot. And then when all of that sort of calms down a little bit, there's this piece of us being able to, as business owners, master what some of that is and pull some of those triggers if we need to, but also feel really safe and calm in just being in our lives and not feeling like we've got to be tethered to the laptop or not feeling like we want to open up more and more loops or not feeling like we're not good enough, so then we should do this other thing. There's all that sort of stuff that you can overlay it with, and I do think that is part of it because there is this kind of huge set of things that we've had to get used to since the technological revolution, and especially even in the last year or so with AI and ChatGPT and Claude and
Mhm.
all of the things. It's like it's such a lot, and so it feels like, and I've seen people write about this recently, like, if I don't stay ahead, then da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but your creative lane has nothing to do with staying ahead. Like, the world is going to world no matter what we do to plug
Yeah.
into the world.
Mhm.
So you've got to bring it back to your creative practice, to what you are being called to do, to what the audience alchemy is. And I talk about this concept more recently, but it's the name of my new program because there is a beautiful, unique audience alchemy that you can find, and all the rest is noise.
Mhm.
Honestly,
Yeah.
like it's just some noise. So when you can attune to the fact that the noise will always be there, whether it's the internal stuff and the mindset stuff, or whether it is like the notifications or the pings or whatever's going on, and then retrain yourself and the way that you plug into your systems, I do think we've got a better chance. And I do think the work that Nico does is part of the key, a big key actually to this sort of stuff. Which is why I wanted to have this conversation and bring you into this live space. And I so appreciate you taking the time, Nico. It's been so insightful.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm really honored to come in and chat with you about it. And I know that you are working with people who are building in a really heart-centered way and have that, tendency to give, 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 give. And so
Mhm.
this is just such a natural way to help build in some pacing, some like little bumpers or guardrails to make sure that our body is able to keep up with our mind. I think that's, they always say like nothing moves as fast as the speed of thought. And so in the digital space, it feels like we are closer compared with when you're doing physical work. And I know you do have some lovely folks who are using Substack to, like I follow some who they're using Substack to, help support their farm or like their knitting businesses or all these different yoga practice, whatever. So they are like a little bit more tethered to the physical compared with some of us who are just in a purely intellectual space where it's so easy for people to just tune out of their bodies and spend those long, long hours. And then next thing you know, the whole daylight is gone. You're like, oh,
Yeah,
am I, I'm not going to go and like walk, because I've been there out there walking the dog with a flashlight, you know,
yeah.
and
Yeah, I did it in a storm earlier this week. I was like, it was actually really refreshing and beautiful. But then there is the practical element where, you need your poop scoop and you're like, oh no, well, like what? So I had to get my phone and like, look, it's like one of them. So, um,
yeah,
but
the
yeah,
real
if
life.
yeah, real life. If you guys want to come next week, so it's next Thursday, and you can join Sparkle on Substack. You can join as a monthly member to get the workshop. You'll get the replay. You can join as an annual member if you'd like to jump in with us. And then, like I said, please go and check out Nico's work because there's such a generosity of spirit in it. And I know that a lot of this is about conversation and a lot of it is about layers of understanding both the work and the research, but where it meets us, because we're constantly up against systemic issues and big tech companies that want to keep us tethered. It's very, very addictive to be on any of these apps, Substack included. So yeah, take care of yourself in it all. But the research is there, and Nico's work's there. And if you want to come and go deeper and hot seat and stuff next week with us, then we'll be over at Sparkle on Substack doing that. Thank you so much, Nico, for being here. It's been so beautiful.
Thank you. You too, Claire. We'll see you next week.
Enjoy. And I will see you next week. The replay will be up if you guys have seen some of it and then want to watch the rest. It'll be up over on the Joyful Growth Club, which we are finalizing with this beautiful live, and then over on Sparkle and Substack as well. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye, Nico.
Bye.